I let my best friend build her entire life around something that wasn't true. And I'm the reason she never found out. I don't think I've ever said that out loud before. Not like that. Not in one sentence. And it sounds worse when I hear it. It sounds final. Like there's no way to soften it anymore. I've been sitting here for, what, almost an hour? Maybe more. Just staring at nothing, trying to figure out where to start. Because once I start, I don't get to pretend this is something smaller than it is. I don't get to keep adjusting the story in my head so I can live with it. And there's something I left out. That's the part that keeps circling back. Not just that I did something wrong, but that I left something out. Something that would have changed everything for her. And she still doesn't know. That's the part that gets me. She still doesn't know. Okay. My name is Karen. I'm 45. I live outside Columbus. I have 2 kids, a mortgage, a job I show up to every morning. If you looked at my life from the outside, you'd think, yeah, she's fine. Stable. Normal. And that might actually be the worst part. Because everything looks normal. Her name is Diane. I almost said was, and I hate that. She's still here. She's still in my life. We still talk. So, her name is Diane. And before anything else, I need to say this clearly. I loved her. I love her. That didn't stop. That didn't fade just because of what happened. If anything, it makes this worse. We met in college. Sophomore year. Random roommate assignment. I remember seeing her for the first time and thinking, there's no way she's going to like me. No way we're going to be friends. She was just loud. Not obnoxious, just unapologetic. Big earrings, big laugh, took up space like she had every right to. And I was the opposite. Quiet. Careful. From this tiny town in Kentucky where you iron your shirts and don't draw attention to yourself. We didn't make sense. But somehow, we did. By the time we graduated, it wasn't even a question anymore. We were inseparable. Like, the kind of friendship where you don't even think about it, you just assume the other person is there. Even after she moved to Portland and I stayed in Ohio, it didn't change. We talked constantly. Midnight texts about nothing. Voice notes. Calls that lasted way too long. She was the first person I called when my dad got sick. The first person I called when I found out I was pregnant. The first person I called for everything. She was my person. And what I did to her. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. There wasn't this one moment where everything broke. That would almost be easier to explain. It was quiet. So quiet I didn't even fully see it happening at the time. It was 100 small decisions. Tiny ones. Ones that felt harmless in the moment. And I kept making them. Over and over. Because I was scared. And by the time I understood what I'd actually been doing, it was already too late to undo any of it. I need to back up. Her husband, Rob. That's his name. They met at my wedding. I introduced them. And I've told that story so many times, like it's this cute coincidence. Like, oh my God, I set them up without even realizing it. I used to laugh about it. I think part of me was proud of it. But not all of me. There was something else there. Something I didn't let myself look at. Not then. Not for years. Because here's the thing I've never said out loud before. Before Diane ever met Rob, I had already planted doubt. I had this conversation with his sister, Megan. We worked together. And I remember saying something like, I don't think Diane's really his type. God, even saying that now, it sounds so arrogant. Like who was I to decide that? What does that even mean, his type? But I said it. And Megan believed me. So she didn't push them together. She didn't encourage it. She stepped back. And for a minute, I think I thought that would be the end of it. But Diane is Diane. She walks into a room and people notice. People gravitate toward her. So of course they found each other anyway. Of course they did. And they fell in love. And they got married. And that should have been the end of my involvement in that part of her life. It should have just been a story I told at parties. But it wasn't. Because about a year into their marriage, Rob started calling me. And I didn't think anything of it at first. I really didn't. He said Diane told him I was going through a rough time, which I was. It was a bad year. Everything kind of fell apart at once. And he said he just wanted to check in. That he saw me as family. And I believed that. I really believed that. But then the calls kept happening. And they got longer. And different. And I didn't realize it at the time, but something had already started shifting in a way I couldn't fully name yet. And the worst part is, I didn't stop it. I didn't even question it. And looking back now, that's where everything actually began to change, even if I didn't see it yet. Because what those calls turned into, I still don't fully know how to explain. At first it really did feel innocent. I need to say that, because I think if I skip over it, it sounds like I knew exactly what was happening from the beginning, and I didn't. I didn't. He'd call maybe once every couple weeks. Just casual. Hey, just checking in. That kind of thing. We'd talk about work, about Diane, about normal life stuff. And I told myself, this is fine. This is what people mean when they say we're like family. But then, it changed. Not all at once. That's the thing I keep coming back to. It would have been easier if there was a moment I could point to and say, that's when it crossed a line. But there wasn't. It just slid there. The calls got more frequent. Once a week. Then twice. And longer. Like, an hour. 2 hours sometimes. And the conversations got. I don't know how to say this without making it sound like something it maybe wasn't. Because even now, I still question myself. I still go back and think, was I imagining it? Was I reading too much into it? But it felt different. He started telling me things he said he couldn't tell Diane. Not terrible things. Just personal things. Frustrations. Doubts. The kind of stuff you usually keep inside your marriage. And I listened. I listened, and I responded, and I didn't shut it down. And then I started sharing things too. Things I wasn't telling anyone else. That's the part one don't like admitting. Because that's where it stopped being passive. That's where I became part of it. I told myself I needed someone to talk to. I told myself I was just going through a hard time. And that was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. Because if I'm being completely honest, there was something about it that felt good. And I hate that. I hate even saying that out loud. But it did. It felt good to have someone choose to talk to me. To open up to me. Especially someone who was hers. God, that sounds awful. I know it does. I didn't think of it like that at the time. I didn't sit there thinking, this is Diane's husband and he's choosing me. But some part of me felt it anyway. Quietly. Underneath everything else. And I didn't question that feeling nearly enough. That's what gets me. Because I had so many chances to stop. So many small, easy exits. I could have just not picked up the phone. I could have told Diane, hey, Rob's been calling me a lot, just wanted you to know. I could have said to him, this feels a little too personal. But I didn't do any of those things. Not once. And the longer it went on, the harder it became to imagine saying anything. Because then I'd have to explain why I hadn't said something sooner. So I just kept going. For 8 months. 8 months of talking to my best friend's husband, twice a week, sometimes more, and never mentioning it to her. 8 months is a long time when you really look at it. At the time, it didn't feel that long. It just felt like life. And I want to be very clear about something, because this matters to me. I never told him anything about Diane. I didn't betray her like that. I didn't give him information or help him in any way. But I also didn't protect her. And that distinction feels smaller the more I sit with it. Because not saying something was still a choice. Every single time. I think I was lonely. I think I was flattered. I think I was getting something from it that I didn't want to look at too closely. And I wrapped all of that up in this story that it was harmless. That it didn't mean anything. That it wasn't really happening. I keep coming back to that word, happening. Because if something isn't clearly defined, if it doesn't have a name, you can pretend it's not real. And I leaned on that. I really did. I told myself, this isn't an affair. This isn't betrayal. This is just talking. Just talking. But looking back now, I don't think that's true. I think I knew, somewhere in me, that it wasn't normal. That if Diane had known, she would have felt something about it. And I avoided that thought every single time it came up. I pushed it down. Changed the subject in my own head. Because acknowledging it would have meant I had to do something. And I didn't want to do anything that would make me lose that connection. God, even saying that now, it makes me feel. I don't know. Small. That's the word that keeps coming up. Small. Because that's what it was, at the core of it. Not some big, dramatic betrayal. Just smallness. And fear. And wanting something that didn't belong to me. And then, everything shifted. Not because of something I did. But because of something she said. Diane called me one night, late, and I could hear it in her voice immediately. That tone. The one where you know something's wrong before they even say it. And what she said next. That's the moment I should have told her everything. I should have. But I didn't. And that decision. That one moment, it didn't just affect me. It changed the next 4 years of her life. And I knew that, even then. I just didn't let myself admit it. She was crying. I remember that first. Not even what she said right away, just the sound of it. That kind of crying where someone's trying to hold it together and failing at the same time. Like every sentence is fighting its way out. And I froze for a second. Because some part of me already knew what this was about. I didn't want to know. But I did. She said she felt like something was off with Rob. That he wasn't there. Not fully. Like he was physically present, but mentally somewhere else. And I swear to you, when she said that, I felt this drop in my stomach. Like my body reacted before my brain caught up. Because I knew what somewhere else might mean. I just didn't want to say it out loud. She kept talking. Saying she didn't understand it. That she kept replaying conversations in her head, trying to figure out if she'd missed something. If she'd done something wrong. And I just sat there, listening. Holding the phone. Not saying anything. And the longer she talked, the worse it got. Because everything she was describing, it lined up. Not in a dramatic, obvious way. Not like, he's cheating, or anything clear like that. But in this, subtle, emotional distance way. The kind you can explain away if you really want to. And I did want to. God, I wanted to. Because if I acknowledged what I was hearing, then I had to connect it to what I'd been doing for the past 8 months. And I wasn't ready to do that. I wasn't ready to see myself in that picture. So I stayed quiet. And then she said something I don't think I'll ever forget. She said, "Karen, you're the most honest person I know. What do you think I should do?" And I still don't understand how I didn't say it right then. I've replayed that exact moment so many times. Like if I go over it enough, I'll find some version where I made a different choice. But I didn't. I paused. I remember that. A long pause. And in that pause, I had every opportunity to tell her the truth. I could have said, "Hey, Rob's been calling me. A lot. We've been talking. And I don't know what it means, but I think you deserve to know." That's all it would have taken. It didn't even have to be dramatic. It didn't have to be accusatory. Just honest. But instead, I told her I thought she should fight for the marriage. And I said it calmly. Steady. Like I believed it. Like I was giving her solid, grounded advice. And the second the words came out of my mouth, I felt it. That feeling like you just crossed something. Like there's a line behind you now, and you can't step back over it. Because I knew, even as I was saying it, that it wasn't the full truth. I wasn't telling her what I actually knew. I wasn't telling her what I'd experienced. I was giving her an answer that protected me. That's the part one can't soften, no matter how many times I try to reframe it. I told myself it was because I didn't have proof. I told myself I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere in her marriage. I had all these reasonable-sounding explanations lined up. But underneath all of that, I was scared. Because if she left him, if everything fell apart right then, I would have to face what those 8 months actually were. I would have to look at it directly and say, this mattered. This wasn't nothing. And I didn't want to do that. So I gave her the answer that kept everything intact. At least on the surface. I told her to stay. To try. To work on it. And she listened to me. That's the part that really gets me. She trusted me enough to take my advice seriously. She didn't question it. She didn't push back. She just believed me. And I let her. She stayed. She went to therapy with him. She tried to fix things. She put in the work. And from the outside, it looked like she was doing everything right. And I watched it happen. That's the part one don't think people fully understand when I try to explain this. I didn't just make one bad decision. I lived inside that decision for years. Because after that call, I still didn't tell her. Even as things got harder for her. Even as she kept calling me, updating me, trying to understand what was going on in her own marriage. I just kept being there. Saying the right things. Nodding along. Supporting her. And every time I did that, it got heavier. Because I knew something she didn't. Not everything. I want to be clear about that. I didn't have some full picture. But I knew enough. Enough that if I had told her earlier, she might have made different choices. And I took that option away from her. Slowly. Quietly. Without ever saying it out loud. And the worst part is, after a while, it almost started to feel normal. Like I adjusted to it. Like I built my life around this version of the story where I was still the good friend. The supportive one. Even though I wasn't being fully honest. I think that's what scares me the most, if I'm being honest. Not just what I did. But how easily I learned to live with it. And I didn't realize how deep I was in it. Until everything finally started to fall apart in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. Because when their marriage actually began to break, I couldn't pretend I wasn't part of the story anymore. It didn't fall apart all at once. That's important, I think. Because if it had been sudden, some big, obvious collapse, I might have reacted differently. I might have been forced to confront everything head-on. But it wasn't like that. It was slow. Uneven. Little cracks that kept getting bigger. She'd call me after therapy sessions sometimes. Not every time, but enough. And she'd sound tired. Not dramatic, not hysterical, just worn down in this quiet way that was somehow worse. She kept trying to understand him. That's what she focused on. Not blaming him, not even really blaming herself at first, just trying to figure it out. Like if she could just understand what was happening inside his head, she could fix it. And every time she said something like that, I felt this pressure in my chest. Because I knew, at least partially, what was happening inside his head. Not everything. I need to be honest about that. I didn't have some full map of his thoughts or intentions. But I knew enough to know that the distance she felt wasn't imaginary. And I still didn't say anything. I kept telling myself, you don't know enough. You might be wrong. This isn't your place. I clung to those thoughts like they were facts. Like they gave me permission to stay silent. But looking back, they were just ways to avoid the truth. Because there were moments, specific moments, where it became really clear to me that what I had with him, those conversations, they weren't neutral. I remember one call in particular. I don't even remember what started it. That's the frustrating part, it was probably something completely normal. But it turned into this long conversation about dissatisfaction. About feeling misunderstood. About wanting something different but not knowing how to ask for it. And I sat there, listening, responding, engaging. And at one point, there was this pause. And it felt loaded. Like there was something just under the surface that neither of us was saying directly. And instead of stepping back, instead of creating distance, I leaned into it. Not physically, obviously. But emotionally. I asked questions. I stayed present. I didn't shut it down. And afterward, I remember putting my phone down and just sitting there. Feeling like something had shifted. And I still didn't tell her. That's the part one keep coming back to. Not just that I made the wrong choice once, but that I kept making it. Over and over. Because every time something like that happened, I had another chance to correct course. To say, this isn't right. To bring it into the light. And every time, I chose not to. I told myself it would hurt her more to know. That it would create problems that maybe didn't need to exist. That I was protecting her from something uncertain. But I wasn't protecting her. I was protecting myself. From the discomfort. From the consequences. From having to see myself as someone who had crossed a line. And while all of that was happening, she was still trying. That's what makes this so hard to sit with. She didn't give up easily. She didn't walk away the first time things felt off. She showed up. Fully. She went to therapy. She communicated. She tried to reconnect. And I watched her do all of that, knowing that part of the reason she felt disconnected might have something to do with me. Even if indirectly. Even if it wasn't the whole picture. I was part of the environment her marriage was existing in. And I stayed silent. Years passed like that. Not the calls, they eventually stopped. That's another thing that's strange about it. They just faded. No big ending. No conversation about boundaries. No acknowledgement of what it had been. It just became less frequent. Then rare. Then, nothing. And for a while, I think I used that as proof that it hadn't been a big deal. See? It ended on its own. It wasn't anything serious. But that didn't erase what had already happened. It didn't undo the fact that I had withheld it. And by the time the calls stopped, the damage in their marriage was already there. She kept trying for years after that. 4 years. 4 years of effort. Of therapy. Of trying to hold something together that, I think, deep down, I knew wasn't going to hold. And still, I didn't say anything. I told myself it was too late. That bringing it up now would only make things worse. That if I hadn't said it earlier, I'd missed my window. So I let that become my excuse. It's too late now. I said that to myself so many times it started to feel true. And then, eventually, it ended. The marriage, I mean. And when it did, I remember feeling this strange mix of things. Relief, which I hated admitting. Guilt, obviously. And something else I didn't want to look at too closely. Because I knew this was the moment where the truth mattered most. This was when she was trying to make sense of everything that had happened. This was when she was asking the biggest questions. And I still didn't tell her. Instead, I sat next to her in it. I held her hand through the aftermath. Through the confusion. Through the grief. And I said all the right things. I told her she hadn't done anything wrong. That she had loved him well. That some things just don't work, even when you try. And every single one of those things was true. That's what makes it so complicated. I wasn't lying to her. But I wasn't telling her everything. And that gap, that space between truth and full honesty, that's where I lived. For years. And I got so used to it that I didn't even realize how much it was shaping everything between us. Until she said something, much later, something small, almost casual, that made it all come crashing back in a way I wasn't prepared for. Because what she said that day, it wasn't about Rob at all, but it made what I'd done feel heavier than ever. It was just a normal call. That's what gets me. Nothing dramatic. No heavy topic, no big emotional moment. Just one of our regular check-ins. The kind we've had for decades now. We were talking about random things, her job, my kids, something on TV. I don't even remember the lead-up. That part's gone. But I remember what she said. Clear as anything. She said, I was thinking the other day about how lucky I am that we have each other. And I smiled when she said it. I probably even said, yeah, or something like that. Automatic. Comfortable. And then she kept going. You know me better than anyone. You're the only person I've never had to explain myself to. And I didn't respond right away. There was this pause. Not long, maybe a second or two. But long enough that she noticed. And in that pause, it was like everything I'd been carrying just surfaced all at once. Because she meant it. She wasn't saying something nice just to say it. She believed that. Completely. That I knew her better than anyone. That I was the safest place in her life. That I was the one person who had never kept anything from her. And I just sat there, holding the phone, realizing how untrue that was. Not entirely untrue. That's the thing that makes it complicated. I do know her. I have been there for her. But not in the way she thinks. Not completely. She laughed a little and said, what, because I hadn't answered. And I said, nothing. I'm just glad we have each other too. And my voice sounded normal. Steady. Like always. But inside, something shifted. That was the moment I understood this wasn't something that was just going to fade with time. It wasn't something I'd eventually get over, or stop thinking about. It was going to be there, in every conversation. In every moment where she trusted me. Like a background noise I couldn't turn off. And I think that's when it really hit me, what I'd actually done. Not just the situation with Rob. Not just the 8 months of calls or the advice I gave her. But what it meant for us. Because her trust in me, it's not small. It's not casual. It's foundational. She has built part of her sense of safety in the world on the idea that I am honest with her. That I'm the person who tells her the truth, even when it's hard. And I'm not. Or at least, I wasn't when it mattered most. And that realization, it didn't come all at once. It kind of unfolded over the next few days, weeks. I kept replaying that moment. That sentence. You're the only person I've never had to explain myself to. And every time I thought about it, it felt heavier. Because it wasn't just about what I had hidden. It was about the version of me she believed in. And how I'd let her keep believing it. That's the part that feels, I don't know, almost worse than the original thing. Because it's ongoing. It's not in the past. Every time we talk, every time she confides in me, every time she says something like that, it's still there. And I have to choose, again, in that moment, whether I'm going to keep not telling her. So now I feel like I'm living in this split. There's the version of our friendship that she experiences. And then there's the full version, the one that includes everything I know. And only one of us is aware of that difference. And I don't know how long I can keep doing that. I really don't. Because it's not just guilt anymore. It's this constant awareness that I'm not showing up as the person she thinks I am. And I don't know if that's fair to her. But then, this is where it gets complicated again. I don't know if telling her now would actually help. She's in a good place. That matters. I can't ignore that. She met someone who Chris. He's a good man. I like him. I genuinely do. And she's different with him. Lighter. More secure. It's not the same dynamic she had with Rob. And part of me looks at that and thinks, okay. Maybe things worked out the way they needed to. Maybe I didn't ruin anything permanent. Maybe this ends in a way that's still okay. But then that other part of me, the part that heard what she said on that phone call, it doesn't let me rest in that. Because even if her life is good now, it was built, in part, on something incomplete. On something I withheld. And I keep asking myself. If I tell her now, who is that for? Is it for her? Or is it just so I can stop feeling like this? Because if it's the second one, that doesn't feel like love. That feels like me trying to clean up my own conscience at her expense. But staying silent doesn't feel right either. It feels like I'm continuing the same pattern. Just on a longer timeline. And I don't know which one is worse. I've been in therapy for 3 years, and I've talked around this. That's the best way I can describe it. I've circled it. Hinted at it. But I've never said it this clearly. Never said, this is what I did. And I think part of me was afraid that if I said it out loud, I wouldn't be able to go back to pretending it wasn't that serious. And now I can't. Because saying it, even here, even like this, it makes it real in a different way. And it leaves me with something I still don't have an answer for. Because I'm running out of ways to justify doing nothing. And I'm starting to realize, doing nothing might actually be the thing that defines me the most in this whole story. And that thought, that maybe this quiet, ongoing silence says more about who I am than the original mistake, that's the part one don't know how to live with. I always thought I knew who I was. Not in some grand, self-important way. Just basic things. The kind of things you don't question about yourself. I'm honest. I'm dependable. I'm a good friend. Those weren't things I proved to myself every day. They were just there. Part of how I understood myself. The baseline. And for most of my life, I think that was true. Or at least, true enough. I showed up for people. I listened. I tried to do the right thing, even when it was inconvenient. I wasn't perfect, obviously, but I wasn't someone who hurt people like this. At least, that's what I believed. And then this happened. Or, no, that's not exactly right. Not this happened. I did this. And it wasn't dramatic. That's the part one keep coming back to. There was no big betrayal scene. No moment where everything exploded and I had to face it all at once. It was quiet. Careful. Almost reasonable, if you looked at each piece on its own. That's what scares me the most. Because it means the version of me who did this doesn't look like a villain. She looks like me. She goes to work. Pays her bills. Calls her mom every Sunday. Laughs at normal things. Lives a normal life. And carries this thing inside her like a stone she's gotten used to holding. I don't know how to hold both of those versions of myself at the same time. The one who genuinely loved Diane, who still loves her, and the one who let her sit in confusion and pain without giving her information she deserved. Those two things don't reconcile neatly. And I think I've spent years trying to make them fit together in a way that lets me off the hook. But I'm starting to realize, maybe they're not supposed to fit. Maybe part of this is accepting that I can be both. Someone who meant well. And someone who caused harm anyway. I want to say something, and I don't know if it'll come out right. I don't think I'm a monster. I need to say that, not to excuse anything, but because I think there's this idea that people who do something wrong on this level must be fundamentally bad. And I don't think that's true. I think what's more uncomfortable, what's harder to sit with, is the idea that regular people, people who see themselves as good, can still make choices like this. Not out of malice. But out of fear. Out of selfishness. Out of wanting something small and immediate, without fully asking what it might cost someone else. That's what this was. There was no big motive. I wasn't in love with Rob. I wasn't trying to take anything from her. I wasn't even consciously thinking of it as crossing a line. It was just smallness. Wanting to feel important. Wanting connection. Wanting something that made me feel seen during a time when I didn't feel that way. And not stopping to ask, what does this do to her? Or maybe, asking it, quietly, and then choosing not to answer. That's probably closer to the truth. There are things I still don't know. I don't know if telling her now would help her or hurt her. I've turned that over in my head so many times I can't even tell which version feels more honest anymore. Because on one hand, she's happy. She's in a good relationship. She's in a good place emotionally. She's not stuck in that old pain anymore. So what would I be doing, bringing this to her now? Am I giving her something she deserves to know? Or am I placing a weight in her life that doesn't actually serve her, just so I don't have to carry it alone anymore? And if that's the case, that's not love. That's self-interest again. But then there's the other side. The part of me that feels like, every time she looks at me with that level of trust, it's based on something incomplete. And that feels like its own kind of harm. Like I'm continuing to take something from her, her ability to fully understand her own past, her own marriage, by staying silent. And I don't know which of those is worse. I don't know if there's a version of this where no one gets hurt. Maybe that option disappeared a long time ago. I've been in therapy for 3 years, and my therapist would probably say something about forgiveness. About how it's a process. About how I don't have to earn it in some strict way. But I don't feel ready for that. Not yet. Because I think there's something important about sitting with this discomfort. Not rushing to fix it. Not rushing to make myself feel better. Just acknowledging it fully. Naming it. Because for years, I didn't even do that. I softened it. Minimized it. Told myself versions of the story that were easier to live with. But the real version is simpler than all of that. I kept something from my best friend that affected years of her life, because I was afraid of what it would mean about me. That's it. That's the truth, without all the extra explanation. And I think, saying it like that, it strips away all the justifications. It leaves me with something I can't really hide from anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. I wish I did. I wish I could end this with some clear decision, some plan, something that makes it feel resolved. But I don't have that. All I know is that doing nothing, just continuing like this, it doesn't feel sustainable anymore. I'm 45. I might have, another 40 years? If I'm lucky? And I don't want to carry this exact weight, in this exact way, for the rest of that time. It's too heavy. But I also don't want to make a choice just to relieve that weight if it ends up hurting her more. So I'm here. In between. Trying to figure out what responsibility actually looks like now. If you're listening to this, and you have something like this, something you've tucked away, something you've reframed so many times it barely resembles the truth anymore, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't even know my own. But I do think there's something about saying it. Even if it's just to yourself. Even if it's just once. Clear. Direct. Without softening it. Because for me, that's the first time it started to feel real. And maybe that's where anything honest has to start. I love her. I really do. And I don't know what I'm going to do with that love, now that I know what I've done alongside it. I think that's all I have. For now. But something tells me this isn't actually over. Because the longer I sit with this, the more it feels like a decision is coming whether I'm ready or not.